Excuse me, I said, my voice shaking but laced with defiance, louder than I meant. And the room fell into a heavy silence as Uncle Terence slowly turned, that smug, patronizing smirk on his face crawling under my skin like a slow poison. Our house. Autumn, sweetheart, he said with a chuckle full of venom. You're just a child. How can you possibly think you can take care of this place? 3 boys, no job, no income. This house is too much for you. I stood my ground and met his eyes. Heart pounding, voice steady. This is our home. My father left it to us. Before I could speak further, Aunt Lisa jumped in, her fake sweetness dripping like syrup. That's adorable, honey. But we've gone through his papers and there's no will, no legal document giving it to you. Nothing that says this house belongs to you or those boys. And just like that, I knew in the chaos of funerals, grieving sleepless nights, and holding my little brothers together, I'd missed the signs. I hadn't expected the people who shared our family dinners to be the same ones ready to push us out into the cold. They gave us 3 days, just 72 hours to leave the only place my brothers had ever called home. But before I continue, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment which country you're watching from. My name is Autumn Carter, and this is the story of how my family tried to destroy me, but how I refused to break, how I held my brothers close, and how I fought with everything I had to reclaim what was rightfully ours. Today, I'm 32, sitting in a high-rise office in downtown Atlanta, but I can still feel the chill of that basement apartment where I began again with 3 broken boys and a heart full of fire. People always ask how I did it, how I survived. The truth is, I didn't always feel like I would. There were nights I cried quietly into my pillow, wondering how we'd survive one more week. But I made a promise to those boys, and I've never broken a promise in my life, so let me take you back. I was 19, a sophomore in college with dreams of becoming a teacher when everything came crashing down. My father, Raymond Carter, died suddenly of a heart attack. He was strong, healthy, full of life one day and gone the next. He'd raised me alone after my mother, Danielle, died of cancer when I was just a toddler. I don't remember much of her, just the sound of her name in my father's stories. 2 years later, he married Angela, gentle, warm-hearted woman who never tried to replace my mother, but who loved me like I was her own. She gave birth to 3 boys: Malik, who was 15 when Dad passed, quiet, steady, always watching; Jordan, 13, funny and wild, the kind of boy who could make you laugh through anything; and Cameron, 11, tender and soft-hearted, the baby who still needed bedtime hugs. When Dad died, Angela was broken. I watched the color drain from her face day by day, and 3 months later she died in her sleep. The doctors said heart failure, but I knew she died of grief. Overnight I became everything to those boys, their protector, provider, comforter, and shield. I dropped out of college without hesitation. Dreams could wait, family couldn't. And just when I thought I'd made peace with the weight on my shoulders, there was a knock at the door. It was the day after Angela's funeral when Uncle Terence and Aunt Lisa arrived with their daughter Belle. They didn't come with flowers or condolences. They came with plans. Autumn, Aunt Lisa began sweetly. We need to talk about the future, the boys, the house. I froze. What about them? Uncle Terence stepped forward like a man preparing to take control. Your father left no will. This house is mortgaged. These boys need structure. You're too young. Let us take them. My chest tightened. I can take care of them. We're a family. They stay with me. Belle smirked. You can't even take care of yourself, but I knew. This wasn't about the boys, it was about control and greed. We'll take them, Terence insisted. You can visit anytime you like. Behind me I felt the boys standing still, listening from the hallway. I stepped in front of them. No, I said. They're not going anywhere. Then Uncle Maurice entered the room, Dad's youngest brother, quiet, unreadable. There's no will, he said coldly. No insurance. Just debt. But I knew better. Dad had shown me a will, held it in his hands just a year before. When I asked to see the papers, Terence grew aggressive. We're trying to help you. Don't make this harder. The next day, they returned with a lawyer, Mr. Banks, a stranger with a polished suit and a chilling voice. He claimed there was no record of a will. I saw it, I said. He had one. There's no legal documentation, he said. The estate is detritus. The uncles will assume guardianship, and just like that, everything was gone. Within a week, my brothers were legally taken from me. Within 2, the house was sold to pay what they claimed were debts. I had just 3 days to pack our lives into boxes and find somewhere to go. That last night we sat in a living room, now hollow, cold, and silent. I gathered the boys, held them close, looked into their scared, uncertain eyes, and said, I don't know what's ahead, but I promise you, I will not let the world break us. You will never sleep hungry. You will never be alone. No matter what it takes, I will protect you. Malik nodded slowly, trying to stay strong, his voice soft. We believe you, Autumn. And that was it. In that moment I became more than a sister. I became their mother, their shield, their light in the darkest storm. They tried to break me with lies and signatures. They tried to tear us apart. But what they didn't know was that my love was stronger than any document. That night, I made a vow to fight for truth, for justice, for us, and I meant every word. We trust you, Malik said gently. And for once, Jordan, the one who always deflected pain with humor, had nothing funny to say. He looked at me quietly, his usual spark dimmed. "We really poor now?" he asked, and though the question was simple, it nearly shattered me. I didn't lie. "I don't have much money," I said softly, "but we have each other, and that's more valuable than anything we've lost." Without saying a word, Cameron curled into my lap like he used to when he was small, his little arms tightening around me. "I want Dad back," he whispered, and I held him closer. "I know, baby, I do too, but wherever Dad is, I know he's watching us, and I know he wants us to take care of each other. Can you help me with that?" He nodded into my chest, and in that moment, I made a silent vow to our father's memory, would never let his children suffer. No matter how hard it got, no matter what it cost, I would hold this family together with my bare hands. That's how we ended up in a basement apartment in East Atlanta I found through Craigslist. The rent was $800, which felt crushing on my part-time retail wage, but it was the only option. The apartment was small, the ceiling low enough to touch, with walls that sweated and a single window that let in more gloom than sunlight, but it was shelter. Mrs. Rodriguez, the landlord, saw the fear behind my eyes and allowed us to move in with only part of the deposit. That first night I lay awake listening to the soft sounds of my brothers sleeping in their shared room, staring at the ceiling, paralyzed by fear. I had just $347 left, 3 boys to care for, and no idea how to make it work. The next day I dropped out of Georgia State and took 3 jobs. In the mornings, I cleaned downtown offices for $12 an hour. In the afternoons I worked at Sonny's Kitchen for $8 plus tips. Evenings and weekends, I babysat for rich families. In Buckhead, people who had everything and never looked close enough to ask why I looked like I hadn't slept in days. The boys had to leave their old schools and start over in overcrowded, underfunded ones. They didn't complain, but I saw it in the slump of Moloch's shoulders, in the way Jordan stopped making as many jokes, and how Cameron clung to me like he was still 6. Malik stepped up first, quietly becoming the man of the house when I couldn't. He did the grocery shopping, cooked dinners, helped with homework, and kept the peace. Jordan masked the pain with comedy, making light of the struggle. "If we eat ramen one more night," he joked, "I'll officially turn into a noodle. Call me Spaghetti Jordan." But Cameron struggled most. He started having nightmares, crawling into my bed and whispering, "Are we going to be okay?" And I always whispered back, "We will," even if I wasn't sure. By the time our second year in that basement rolled around, I had carved out a system, fragile but functional. I worked about 70 hours a week, ran on caffeine, stress, and stolen moments of hope. I barely slept, but the boys were climbing. Malik held a 3.8 GPA. Jordan made the basketball team. Cameron joined the school choir and began singing again, but the pressure crushed me. One cold December night I came home to find the power shut off. I'd missed the payment again, and the electric company didn't care about our story. I sat in my car outside, staring at the dark apartment, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. I had $23 to my name, rent due in 5 days, and no health insurance to take Cameron to the doctor for the cough that wouldn't go away. I thought about calling Uncle Terrence. Maybe he was right. Maybe they could give the boys what I couldn't. But then I remembered the greed in his eyes when he snatched our house, the speed at which they pushed us out. I couldn't trust him. I couldn't let them win. I wiped my tears and walked inside. Then I gathered every candle I could find and lit them all. "We're camping tonight," I told the boys, trying to sound excited. Indoor camping, ghost stories, everything. We wrapped up in every blanket we owned and huddled on the couch. Jordan cracked jokes until our sides hurt. Malik read aloud by candlelight. Cameron fell asleep in my lap, calm and safe. That night, after they slept, I pulled out a journal and began writing. I wrote down everything I could remember about Dad's finances, his will, our conversations, the way the uncles acted, Mr. Banks' strange behavior. I didn't know why I needed to write it all down, but something in my gut told me it would matter someday. From there, we started making traditions. Sunday mornings became pancake mornings. No matter how little money we had, I always made pancakes. Some weeks it was just flour and water, no toppings. Other weeks, if we were lucky, we had bananas, jam, or old syrup, but those mornings felt like gold. When Malik turned 16, I knew I couldn't buy him a car or throw a party, but I had been saving for months. I gave him a silver watch I'd bought from a pawn shop. "Every Carter man needs a good watch," I said, repeating what Dad used to tell him. He opened the box and teared up. "Autumn, you didn't have to. You're my brother," I said. "You deserve everything." For Jordan's 16th, he wanted to go on a movie date but was too embarrassed about his clothes. I worked extra shifts and surprised him with a clean button-up, new sneakers, and cologne. "You look amazing," I said as he got ready. "Dad would be so proud." "Thanks, Mom," he said, then caught himself. Autumn, it's okay," I said softly, and it was. Cameron was different, artistic, sensitive, and full of light. When he turned 14, his choir teacher called me. "He's gifted," she said. "He needs real voice lessons." My heart cracked. We could barely afford food, let alone lessons. But I didn't say no. I started researching scholarships, community programs, anything that might help, because by that point, I knew we weren't just surviving anymore. We were rebuilding. We were becoming a family that no amount of loss could break. I couldn't afford formal training, but I refused to let Cameron's gift fade in the shadows of our poverty. So I made a deal with Miss Evelyn, a retired opera singer with a kind heart and aching joints, who agreed to coach him in exchange for me cleaning her house twice a weekend. The first time I heard Cameron's voice glide through the auditorium, silencing a crowd of restless parents and students, I wept in my seat as if hearing hope sing for the very first time. Beside me, Mrs. Rodriguez, our landlord turned guardian angel, held my hand and whispered, "You've raised remarkable boys." And all I could manage was, "I'm trying," because by 23, I wasn't surviving anymore. I was unraveling, completely hollowed out from years of working myself to exhaustion, skipping meals to feed my brothers, fighting migraines and sleepless nights while pretending everything was fine. And even though Malik was preparing for college, Jordan was leading the basketball team, and Cameron was winning awards with his voice, I was collapsing under the weight of holding their world together. And one evening at the diner, that weight finally crushed me when I passed out mid-shift, dropping a tray and waking up in the hospital with an IV in my arm, sterile lights above me, and the terrified eyes of my brothers staring from the corner, while Mrs. Rodriguez sat quietly beside me like a guardian angel. The doctor didn't sugarcoat it. "You're running on empty. One more crash like this, and your body might not recover." And though I nodded, I didn't know how to stop, because stopping meant failing them. But when we returned home, Malik stepped in, voice trembling, "Autumn, this can't continue." And I tried to argue, but Jordan's eyes filled with tears and Cameron wrapped his arms around me, whispering, "Let us help." And that night, I finally broke, crying for everything I'd buried for years, for Mom, for Dad, for every dream I'd let slip away, and they held me. My boys, the same boys I'd fought so hard to protect, now holding me like I was the one who needed saving. And when I said I was scared, terrified I wasn't enough, Malik looked at me with so much certainty and said, "You are everything," and Jordan promised we'd make it. All of us. While Cameron, quiet, steady Cameron, vowed, "Someday, you'll never have to worry about money again." And none of us knew then how close that future really was, because a few weeks later, Jordan, now deep into an AP economics class, came to me holding a folder of notes and printouts, saying something wasn't right about Dad's estate. There were no probate filings, no court records, no guardianship documentation, and the deeper we looked, the more clear it became that Uncle Terence hadn't just lied, he had fabricated everything. And Malik, fueled by rage, said what none of us wanted to admit: this was fraud. And Jordan added, "It's always about money." But we were confused. What money? We were told Dad died broke, but I couldn't ignore the knot in my stomach, so I pulled every record I could get my hands on: property deeds, transfer filings, old employment contracts, and what I found made my blood run cold. Our house, the one they said was worthless and sold for pennies, had actually been sold for $150,000, 3 times what they claimed, and the debts they'd used as justification, fabricated or grossly inflated. And then came the bombshell. I contacted Carter Williams Logistics, where Dad had worked, and what I discovered turned everything on its head. Dad hadn't been a manager. He had been a co-founder, owning 40% of the company. And when he fell ill, his business partner told me they offered to buy his shares, but Dad refused, saying he wanted to leave everything to his kids. And after he died, his brothers arrived with a lawyer, claimed to be handling the estate, and cashed out his shares for $3 million. I nearly dropped the phone, and when I told my brothers, the room fell silent until Cameron, barely above a whisper, said, "They stole $3 million from us." And Malik, jaw clenched, replied, "While we were rationing light bulbs." And Jordan added, "They didn't just rob us, they erased his legacy." But it didn't stop there, because I uncovered a life insurance policy for $400,000, several investment accounts, savings, even small real estate holdings, all liquidated and vanished in days after his death, with Uncle Terence's signature all over the documents, forged or falsely witnessed. And by the time I added it all together, they had taken nearly $5 million from Euless, $5 million while we lived on ramen, skipped birthday gifts, and lit candles when the power went out. And I was furious, but I was also broke. And in America, justice costs money. And every law firm I reached out to said the same thing: too old, too complicated, no clear path. And yet, I refused to quit. I reached out to legal aid groups, civil rights organizations, anyone who had ever helped people like me. And most doors slammed shut. But I kept knocking, because this wasn't just about revenge, it was about truth, about honoring Dad's name, about reclaiming the future they tried to steal. And every step we took forward we took together, because they thought they could erase us with paperwork, bury us in silence, and profit off our grief. But what they didn't count on was our resilience, our unity, our fire. And they especially didn't count on me, the girl they thought was too young, too broke, too weak to fight back, because this time, they weren't facing a grieving daughter or a frightened sister. They were facing a woman with nothing to lose and everything to reclaim. They told me to let it go. The case was too old, too complicated, too expensive. But I wasn't chasing justice for convenience. I was chasing it because our lives had been stolen. Then came Sarah Chen, a fresh, determined lawyer just starting her own practice. She reviewed the files I'd gathered over the years, then looked up, stunned. "Autumn," she said, "this is one of the most deeply layered estate frauds I've ever seen, but we still needed the smoking gun proof that couldn't be ignored." That's when she suggested we dig into Mr. Banks, the lawyer who'd supposedly handled Dad's estate. What we found was horrifying. Disbarred for financial misconduct 2 years after Dad's death, he was now hiding out in a crumbling town outside Augusta, selling used cars and drinking guilt like water. He refused to talk until Sarah pushed hard, threatened exposure, legal consequences. His face collapsed under the weight of his guilt. "They gave me $50,000, he admitted. "I was drowning in debt. They said it was just paperwork, that the kids would be better off with real guardians." "What paperwork?" Sarah asked. "The will," he said quietly. "Raymond's real will, and trust documents. There was a trust, a big one, for the kids, but it had conditions. The boys had to graduate. The girl, you had to turn 25. Until then, the money stayed untouched." My voice shook. "How much?" he exhaled. "$70 million when I destroyed it. Now, with compound interest, maybe $100 million. My knees almost gave out. "Where is it now?" Sarah asked. "Still at the bank, still growing. They don't know the will was destroyed." Armed with Banks's confession and a mountain of proof I'd collected, Sarah filed a case, and within days, the headlines took over. "Family discovers stolen $100 million inheritance after living in poverty for years." Suddenly, the same people who vanished when we were hungry, Uncle Terence, Aunt Lisa, Uncle Morris, started calling. They wanted to talk, to clear things up. I agreed under one condition: they meet me with Sarah present. And so, for the first time in 6 years, we sat across from each other in a conference room. Terence entered first, older, paler, unsteady. Lisa clutched her purse nervously, and Morris, cold as ever, leaned back with his arms folded. "Autumn," Terence began, "this has all been a tragic misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding," Sarah cut in, "was your belief you'd never be caught. We were protecting the children," Lisa added. "You were 19, overwhelmed. You couldn't handle millions or raise 3 boys. Malik, now 18, strong, unflinching, stepped forward. You stopped being family when you threw us out." "This doesn't need to get ugly," Morris said, voice like steel. "We can resolve this quietly." "You watched us starve," Jordan shot back, "while you lived off what was ours." Belle, their daughter, spoke up timidly. "We didn't spend it recklessly. We invested it wisely. In yourself, maybe," Cameron said softly. "We didn't even have winter coats." The meeting crumbled in minutes. The legal battle that followed was brutal. Terence hired top lawyers who painted me as unstable, claiming I was unfit to raise my brothers. They filed countersuits, spread lies in the press, said I was inventing stories to get rich. Then came the bribes offering my brothers new cars, college funds, if they'd just say I'd been unfit. Not one of them wavered. "She gave us everything," Malik said. "We owe her everything." But the uncles weren't done. Maurice turned sinister. He started appearing at my jobs, lurking near our home. Then, one night I came home to Kaisa's apartment broken in 2, documents tossed, nothing stolen, except my piece. On my pillow, a note: "Some secret should stay buried." I reported it, but there was no proof. Sarah warned me, "Routines, don't walk alone, stay vigilant." Fear began seeping into my bones, but my brothers stood taller. Malik had earned a full ride to Georgia Tech. Jordan was shining on the basketball team. Cameron, now a senior, had won a scholarship to Berkeley. They could have walked away, started new lives. But they stood with me. "You protected us," Jordan said. "Now we protect you." The trial opened on a freezing February morning. The courtroom was filled, press, strangers, neighbors, all watching our story unfold. I sat beside Sarah, wearing a suit she helped me pick. Behind me, my brother stood, proud and unshakable. As the judge entered and silence fell over the room, my mind flashed back to candlelit nights in the basement, whispering to my brothers, "We'll be okay." And now finally we were. The courtroom was filled with silence thick enough to choke on as I sat in the front row, my 3 brothers right behind me, strong, grown, and standing tall, living proof of the fight we had endured. Across from us sat Uncle Morris, and Aunt Lisa with their army of lawyers, dressed in tailored guilt and fake righteousness. Sarah, my brilliant lawyer, stood and laid it all bare: every forged signature, every missing document, every dollar stolen from 4 grieving children, by the very people meant to protect them. "They didn't just take money," she told the jury, her voice calm but cutting. "They stole childhoods, dignity, and futures." The defense stumbled, claiming they'd acted in love, in confusion, in honor. But then Mr. Banks was called. The disgraced lawyer, trembling and pale, confessed everything. "Paid $50,000 to destroy our father's real will and replace it with fraud. They said it was for the kids' own good." He wept, but I knew what I was doing. "I've regretted it every day." And when Sarah asked who paid him, He pointed directly at Tern and Maurice, and the courtroom shifted. What followed was a flood of revelations. Dad's business partner confirmed a $3 million payout that vanished. Financial statements proved luxury lives lived off our stolen legacy, and photos showed the contrast between their mansions and our basement apartment. Sarah even presented my work history: 3 jobs, no sleep. Also, my brothers could survive while the people who stole from us drank champagne. But nothing cut deeper than the voices of the boys I raised. Malik stood first, his voice steady. She was 19, he said. She gave up everything to keep us together. That's what a real parent does. Jordan followed, full of energy and pain, recalling pancakes on Sundays, jokes in the dark, and my unshakable smile. I used to ask why our parents had to die, he said, but I think God left Autumn to be our anchor. And then Cameron, now 21, stood and spoke. She cried at night when she thought we were asleep, but in the morning she'd be strong again. She gave us hope when we had nothing, when the defense dared to say they'd have been better off with adults. Cameron's answer echoed. She didn't supervise us, she loved us. She sacrificed her life for ours. The defense unraveled. Uncle Tern took the stand and lied, claiming ignorance, concern, good intentions. But Sarah's cross-examination destroyed every excuse. You paid $50,000 to destroy a trust worth $100 million. Are you saying you didn't know what you were doing? She demanded. He stumbled, evaded, cracked. Lisa broke down completely, sobbing that they'd known about Dad's assets, that they just thought we couldn't handle it. We thought we were doing what was best, she whispered. Morris refused to testify, and Sarah used that silence to strike the final blow. He won't speak because there is no justification for stealing from orphans. The jury didn't even need a day. Just under 3 hours later, the verdict was clear. We fined for the plaintiffs on all counts. The judge didn't stop there. He ordered the trust to be released immediately, issued damages for our suffering, and slammed them with punitive fines. But then came something none of us expected. The judge pulled out a sealed letter, a final gift from our father found in a safety deposit box. His voice soft, the judge read aloud. My dearest children, if you're hearing this, I'm no longer with you, and for that, I'm deeply sorry. Everything I built for you. This trust will take care of you financially. But more than that, I hope you always have each other. Autumn, my brave girl, I know the burden will fall on you. I chose you because I believe in your strength. Don't forget to care for yourself. To Malik, you have my mind and your mother's heart. Jordan, your laughter is your light. And Cameron, never stop singing. The world needs your voice. I love you more than words can hold. By the time the judge finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom, not even among the strangers. News outlets called it the trial of the decade. Reporters swarmed us for interviews, calling it a miracle, a fight for justice won. But to us, it wasn't about the trust fund or the headlines. It was about truth, healing, and reclaiming what was stolen. It was about a girl who chose love over ease, brothers who grew up believing in her, and a father who even in death had never stopped protecting us. We walked out of that courthouse not as victims, not even just as winners, but as a family, unbreakable, unshaken, and finally